Good morning. All right, how about it? Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Philadelphia. Welcome to the University of Pennsylvania, the School of Design, and this extraordinary meeting. My name is Marilyn Taylor. I'm the Dean of the School of Design, a lifelong architect and urban designer, absolutely delighted to be among your company today. And it's a pleasure to welcome you here and to announce that this wonderful gathering of friends and colleagues who constitute the Landscape Architecture Foundation is now coming to order for the first of our 2 days here together. How many of you are from Philadelphia? How many of you ever lived in Philadelphia? How many of you want to live in Philadelphia? Come and join us. We'd be delighted to have you. Philadelphia is an amazing city. I gave up New York City to come here 8 years ago, and I could not be happier about that decision. I do hope that even with this agenda that you have, you'll take some time to explore it. One point very relevant to our discussions today is how literally green, blue, and brown Philadelphia is. Our city encompasses approximately 84,000 acres. Over 1/9, 9,000 of those are the Fairmount Park system, and another 1/9 are our industrial lands, most of them fallow and ready for new uses. Those two elements are indications of the great future that lies ahead for our city. Thank you, President Kona, Executive Director Barbara Deutsch, and members of the LAF board for accepting Richard Weller's invitation to come to Philadelphia this year. Together, we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Concerns set forth with high expectations and determination by Ian McHarg and his band of colleagues. Standing here, and especially if you look up, it seems appropriate for an architect to take one moment for another field of design, architecture. We find ourselves in this curious ceremonial room and this curious monumental building designed by Philadelphia architect Horace Trumbauer in the 1920s. It was a high time of civic culture here in Philadelphia. Trumbauer's chief architect was Julian Abele, an African-American who regrettably was never given the public credit he surely deserved for the many works of the Trumbauer firm. Irvine Auditorium itself is said to demonstrate the persistence of collegiate Gothic style. It was 1920, we were moving on to other styles at that time, but it clearly felt the challenge of responding to its idiosyncratic neighbor, the extraordinary modern library designed 4 decades earlier in splendid Venetian Gothic style with more than a touch of the Victorian by our famous original architect, Frank Furness. Today, our amazing architectural archives occupy its ground floor, making the works of Kahn, Venturi Scott Brown, and Halprin, among others, available to scholars and to curious members of the public as well. Just a few thoughts. Philadelphia is a collaborative city. Interestingly enough, it was the Furness Library that brought Bob Venturi and Denise Scott Brown together. They were both on the PennDesign faculty sometime in the 60s when the subject of an imminent proposal to demolish the Furness Library came up for discussion. Alone among those attending, Denise flew to the defense of the building. Afterwards, Bob came up to say that she was right. Typically, rather than accepting the compliment, she turned to him and said, "Then why didn't you speak up too?" In such meetings as these, partnerships and collaborations that change the world are born. Speaking up for Venturi Scott Brown, as for Ian McHarg, becomes important. So too, for all of us. If we do not speak up, who will? And speaking of Venetian Gothic, I just returned from Venice, from the opening of the Architecture Biennale, a show about speaking up. As we all know, it takes place in a garden and in an arsenal in one of the world's most beautiful and precarious cities. This year's show is curated by the Chilean architect, who was also recently named the Pritzker Prize winner, Alejandro Aravena. His theme is reporting from the front, something I think we should keep in mind as we spend these 2 days together. While we can speculate what he means by that charge, it is clearly his call to architects And I could say to designers to engage in the tremendous and challenging social issues of our times: growing demand for city life, massive destabilizing migrations, scarce resources, threats of wind, water, and fire, and the need to reach greater equity in opportunity, education, and quality of life. To put myself in the mind of Italy at the age of Venetian power, I found myself on a plane reading a marvelous book by Helen Attlee, The Land Where Lemons Grow, the story of Italy and its citrus fruit. It was a gift. I thought maybe it was a travelogue or some sort of simple history, but in fact, it's an extraordinary story of the Arabs who brought citrus to Sicily, and of the ways in which wealthy and curious 16th and 17th century Italians tried to match their passion for gardens with a scientific interest in not only the cultivation of lemons, but also the huge variety of hybrids that could easily be created. In her book, Attlee quotes Galileo. I put it up here because it's a very complex structure and a wonderful idea. If there were as great a scarcity of soil as of jewels or precious metals, there wouldn't be a prince who would not spend a bushel of diamonds and rubies and a cartload of gold just to have enough earth, to sow an orange seed and watch it sprout, grow and produce its handsome leaves, its fragrant flowers, and fine fruit. Landscape architecture might just come again to celebrate soil, citrus, and our responsibility for the cultivation of knowledge, and to face the challenges of where and how we will live as water intrudes and covers the soil that supports our places of living and working. Whether we are in Venice or Philadelphia, or at home or on site, wherever that is, we as designers must seek better ways to value the ecological assets essential to our individual and collective lives and well-being. We will not succeed without fresh thinking on cities and human settlements. They are the venues through which we will achieve greater social equity or not. We cannot shrink from responsibility for the urban. And we cannot expect to do it alone. Science is our friend and our ally. But we also need to integrate in our thinking all the principles that we can learn and gain, and the information we get from sociology, from social science, the integration of our landscape with the values and qualities of each distinctive community, with an understanding of what it takes to face risk, overcome deficiencies, and commit to inhabiting land, or to making a choice to inhabit land nearby. Cities and settlements, environmental degradations and politically driven migrations, soil and water, design thinking and collaborations, these are some of the critical pieces of this century's declaration of concern. Thank you very much for being here with us. I really look forward to hearing from all of you. Have a great day. Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to bring to the other podium Kona Gray, the president of the Landscape Architects Foundation. Welcome to the podium.
Good morning. I said good morning. All right, fantastic. So on behalf of the LAF Board of Directors, the Board Emeritus, and our wonderful staff, we would love to welcome you to this historic event. We're so excited about this. You guys have exceeded our expectations. First and foremost, we need to thank some people who have made this possible. Love to be here and announce to you guys our thankfulness to Penn, especially, for their hospitality, their gracious in-kind support, and all their dedication to this profession. So Marilyn, Richard, and all the landscape architects at PennDesign, thank you so much for all your efforts. I'd like to thank our board of directors, because without your big thinking and audacity, we wouldn't be here today. The board members, please stand. Thank you so much. So as a nonprofit, the Landscape Architecture Foundation receives support from many people, industry partners, landscape architecture firms, universities, and individuals. We're so thankful and so grateful for your attention to our cause and our mission. So I'd like to thank our supporters. And tomorrow night, there will be more opportunity for you to see how you can get involved with the LAF as well. Thank you. So, you may be wondering how we all got here. So we started about a year ago planning this event. We knew we had to do something for our 50th year. We didn't know what it was going to be. But I remember the mid-year meeting when it all started to gel. And that's when Richard Weller stepped up and said, okay, I'll take this on. And it's been quite a ride. We initially expected to only have about 300 people in attendance. We have over 715 people that have registered and are attending this event, so kudos to you. So in the spirit of envisioning the future, you may note that we have assembled an amazing group of designers, environmentalists, landscape architects from all over the world. And this is a map of the United States to show where everyone is coming from. So it's pretty intriguing. Years and years ago in 1966, it was all about the American landscape. That was our concern. Things have changed. Now we are interested in the global landscape, the things we can do to affect the capacity of landscape architects to help to preserve, enhance, and improve the environment. There were only 6 men, white men to be exact, that started the declaration back in 1966. How cool is it that there's over 715 people here today to be a part of this process over the next couple of days into the weekend? We're extremely excited, and we're impressed. I mean, this is a who's who of landscape architects, and the audience that has joined us is exceptional, and we are so excited for your support and your interest in our common environment as well. So how about that? Let's get started, right? You guys pumped up? You ready to go? All right. Very exciting times. So, as I said before, in 1966, it was about the American landscape, all right? Think bigger now. We're talking about the global landscape. We're talking about our environment. We are all intertwined now. It's very amazing. You know, they used to say when the US catches a cold, the rest of the world sneezes. It's different now. We're all together as one. So we really want you to think bold. We want you to be provocative. We want you to be exciting. We want you to challenge us. We want you to be critical. This is not about kumbaya and everybody having fun. This is about challenging the status quo. We're going to talk about everything from the urban ecology, diversity, the landscape architecture practice, things that are happening in our world that affect all of us. So once again, thank you so much for all your hard work. We have amazing speakers that have spent a lot of time preparing for this event. They're very excited to show you what they are thinking about and express their thought leadership, and we're excited to hear from you. We are here to shape the future, and we want all of you to have a voice in that process. Thank you so much. So now, to give you the lay of the land, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Barbara Deutsch.
Wow, this is totally awesome. We've been working so hard for this and so appreciate you taking your time out of your work, out of your personal time tomorrow to be here and be a part of this. And we're really looking forward to the next 2 days. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about actually the work you're going to be doing in the next 2 days. We wanted to bring, when we were thinking about our 50th anniversary and what to do and how to mark this historic occasion and recognizing the needs in the world today, we wanted to bring the profession together to really get ourselves organized and planned so we can make the most of this, of our limited number to make the most change. Because we do feel that this is our time. If there is the age of engineering and then there is the age of architecture, this is the age of landscape architecture to meet the needs, the complex environmental, social, economic needs of today, the issues that we have. And we think there is a global shift in consciousness taking place, even if it's not here politically in the US, but from Paris to the Pope to even the Prime Minister in Canada, the support for thinking, yes, it's time, we need to do something. So we know that the good fairy doesn't just tap you on the shoulder and all of a sudden it happens and all of a sudden it's the age of landscape architecture. And that's why we're here, to get organized and figure out how to make the most of our limited number and make our vital contribution. So thank you for being here. 50 years ago, the rivers were on fire. They were septic, the air was polluted, development was unchecked. A lot of those things are still happening in other places of the world and even here. But there were people that spoke up and made a difference. And certainly that era of activism, whether it was environmental activism or civil rights movement, made a difference. It provided this framework for to protect our resources that got us this far. And certainly this image it goes way back, but this is the first Earth Day in 1970. 22 million people around the country gathered to celebrate the Earth. It was here, this is Fairmount Park in Philadelphia, so we are in a special place, coming back here to reconvene and figure out how to move forward. And at this time, all this legislation, unbelievable. Can you imagine getting this done today here in the US? But 10 years, 10 years of work from this activism. People were active, and they were dealing with things that maybe toxic substances and things that we can see. And now we know we're dealing with some things we can't always see: carbon emissions, stormwater pollution, but we can see the effects. Species extinction, all the cultural anxiety at large that we all experience, and a world in which new generations today don't even know that weather used to be more regular and predictable and steady and constant. So we are dealing with these issues of global warming and climate change, adaptation. There are 7.4 billion people on this planet now. 50 years ago, there were 3 billion, so we've more than doubled that in 50 years. And all those people need a place to live, work, rest, and play. And that's where we come in, right? So right now we're operating at an ecological footprint of 1.5 planets worth of resources. We're out of planets. That's not sustainable by any definition. But this is where we come in, because with any of these issues, no matter how you define sustainability, whether it's zero carbon, zero waste, net zero water, biodiversity, livability, health and happiness, you cannot achieve any of them without considering landscape. And so the question is, are we fully participating to our greatest potential to influence and assert the landscape perspective, assert the landscape approach, and make sure we implement sustainable landscape solutions? So that is why we're here today, and we appreciate so much you participating, because we need to be smart, we need to be strategic. There aren't as many landscape architects as there are architects or civil engineers. And so as I said, we need to be smart and strategic, and the good news is we are. So we just need to get organized. Because when research shows that although things are much easier to influence when you have a majority or even parity, minority interests have influence at or above 20% level. So yes, wouldn't the world look differently today if we had over 200,000 landscape architects here in the US? I know in China they're having a lot of landscape architects, 40,000 graduates a year. But we shouldn't wait to not make our contribution because there's a limited number of us. And so we should still strive to grow the profession. While we're doing that, we can't we can't wait. We just need to be emboldened to show that in the meantime, we can still influence and lead, and that is why we're here. You're going to hear a lot about, well, you've already heard a lot about the Declaration of Concern, this is the first initiative of LAF to get together to chart its strategy to increase the capacity of the profession and forms the basis for the Landscape Architecture Foundation. Over the next 2 days, we're going to respond to this, and the objective is to develop a new landscape declaration. And this is where we're getting this conversation and strategy started. So if you look at the declaration, and hopefully you've all read it, and if you had it, you're going to hear about it, and it's always good to read again. But the way it's organized into 3 conceptual areas. The first part talks about the current issues or the environmental crisis. The second part talks about the agency or the role of landscape architects to help solve the environmental crisis. And then the final part are the strategies to help landscape architects make their vital contribution to solve the environmental crisis. So our job here in the next 2 days is to update this declaration. We're going to get the inputs from it through a series of speakers today, kind of like a day of TED Talks, with over 25 declarations responding to this declaration of concern and offering their vision for the future. We'll hear with a closing panel, kind of start to pull all this together. And then tomorrow we have curated panels, both by content and types of practice, to respond to what is said today, and then start to develop the strategies and priorities from which we'll take the outputs from this 2-day summit to draft as the inputs to the new landscape declaration. And then I'll tell you what's next in terms of where we're going to finalize it with your help. But I do want to say we all know this is a very ambitious format, but and as such, it inherently is not perfect, but we wanted to see how far we could get, and we certainly want to keep the bar high, and we want to make the most of this moment in time. So thank you again for being here, part of it. We know that thankfully there are way more leaders in the profession who could not be here, but we have over 700 people here, totally exceeding our expectations. And we're going to work with you through different ways to get your input and engage in this conversation. And please be provocative and incisive, and tweet in your questions and answer the polls and write down. I hope you all saw those declare cards. Make sure your voice is heard. But we know that not every geographic area is or could possibly be represented here, and we know we don't look like the face of America, but we decided to adopt the Buddhist mantra to just start where we are, right? Because if we wait till it's perfect, it's too late. So we have an amazing asset here with all of you and a venue to really get this ball rolling and start this conversation and action plan. Oh, I forgot to say that after tomorrow, we will summarize. There's going to be a lot going on, so we'll try to summarize some of the key outputs that have come out of this event, this 2 days, and then we will make a toast to the future. Okay, and then after the toast, the next step game plan to draft the new landscape declaration is we'll take all the input. LAF will lead a task force to draft the new landscape declaration. And we'll put it out for a public comment period, and there'll be lots of different ways to give your input. And then we'll have the final draft at the annual meeting in New Orleans, and at our LAF Expo booth, everyone can come by and sign it. So instead of 6 signatures 50 years ago, we'll have hundreds of people who are part of this process, helping to position the profession for the next 10, 20, 50 years to meet the demands of today. And then once we have the new declaration, we're also going to be looking to get organized and collaboratively and cooperatively with other organizations, both within and outside the profession, who we will work with, right? We made a conscious choice to just bring in the profession. It went against every collaborative bone in our body just to have landscape architects here, but we figured we needed to get organized internally before we can strengthen the way we're going out and working with others to help make a difference. So we will work on the action plans, the implementation, and we don't plan on waiting another 50 years before we come back together. We'll come back in 5 years, 10 years to help look at how are we tracking to the goals that we want to achieve, and so we can adapt, improve, and achieve those goals. This new declaration is also part of a larger context, a deliberate process, whereby we're working at a global scale. I think when you look at the declaration, that's a key thing. It was specifically talking about the American landscape, but as you'll hear today, we live in a global world. And so the output from the new landscape declaration will form the input also for IFLA to take to the World Design Summit in a year and a half in Montreal, where it's not just landscape architects, but other designers. The IFLA was one of the 3 founding partners with planners, architects, graphic designers, industrial designers, and interior designers to come together to try to give an economic voice or power to design and political influence. So the input we have will be represented by IFLA at the summit. Okay. And I should say that other countries have formed their charters and declarations, and so this is perfect timing for the United States and all of you here to contribute to that, to also a global perspective of the profession and our contribution. So lots ahead, and this was a very deliberate process, but wanted to also acknowledge and recognize the invaluable benefits of being here, of meeting with your colleagues and friends, having fun, learning, sharing, and putting all of our individual interests aside and coming together to build something larger than ourselves for the betterment of all. So it's fun, and we really appreciate you being here, and thank you for committing to this journey.